Where is Ertl? Who is Ertl? Why is Ertl? So I'm going to start here. This is one of my most recent Ertl pickups, and it's pretty much in line with what I think of when I think of Ertl. But it turns out that Ertl really isn't the company that I thought it was once I started doing a little bit of research into it. Now, as you can see here, this is classic Ertl. This is a nice die-cast, detailed model of a space shuttle. I was actually having a look before I started filming to try and see exactly how old this one was. But we have all these sort of the details on the back here that says Ertl, made in China for the Ertl Company, Dyersville, Iowa. So I think it's always been based there, but obviously it's morphed a little bit over time. And fun fact, Ertl is now owned by Tomy, who seem to acquire everybody at some point, but they are now a subset of Tomy. So I'm just looking at this. So this is sort of the membership application, if you like, but I still can't actually see a date. That's not a date. It just seems to be some sort of reference number there. So I'm not quite sure when this is dated from, and I'm actually going to open it because it's not particularly sealed. So let me just have a look, and I might be able to get a more definitive answer. I don't generally unbox things, but I don't think that generic Ertl things are going to carry much value, but I will come back to that as a concept. I actually meant to check something on my phone before I started recording, but I haven't. I think I'm right in terms of what I'm thinking. Pretty dusty on the inside. It's even got its decals, actually. It's never even had its... Now, this is going to slightly scupper me because I'd rather thought I could just get it out, but I don't think I can because it's still in its bubble. So maybe I'll just leave it in there for now. So as you can see, got a NASA there, but can you see it's got? I think it's still got its sticker sheet in the bottom there. The looks of it. So maybe there are some more stickers to be applied. I assume it would fit in there. It's got a robotic arm. And this is classic Ertl. Ertl seems to take real care with the details, but there just isn't any indication there of a date. So I really can't date that for you, which shows a distinct lack of research on my part, and I do apologise for that. But certainly it's old enough that it's gathered some dust over its time. I mean, given that it's of the space shuttle, I'm guessing very early 80s would be my guess. Because that was when the space shuttles were kind of in their prime, really. So that was the sort of thing that I would associate with Ertl with. Now, in terms of my first experience of Ertl, I'm actually going to wander around a little bit. And I'll show you this. Because technically speaking, this is my first experience of Ertl. It's this, which is of course a Klingon bird of prey from Star Trek 3. And as you can see, it's blue and very helpfully emblazoned with the words Star Trek on its wings, which of course is not at all movie accurate, but nevertheless I loved this toy growing up. It's fully metal, there is no plastic to be had on this toy whatsoever, so it's a rather lovely thing in terms of durability because nothing is damaging that and it's going nowhere fast. Pretty nasty actually on the corners because it's all metal. There's no plastic there to soften the blow, and also came with a stand. Now, they then re-released this model for Star Trek 5, and I actually happened to have a carded one of these because I picked it up on eBay purely because I wanted to get a closer look at it. The colouring put me off at the time, so I never actually owned one at the time when it was out. But now I actually appreciate the colouring and even a little bit of camouflaging on it a bit more because it's actually not a bad rendition of a bird of prey, and it doesn't have Star Trek written on the flipping wings anymore. So fair dues to them, it's actually a pretty spot on bird of prey. Now, in terms of, it's not even punched, this one, fair dues. And this was 1989. So in 1989, I'm sorry, I'm not showing the right part there. There we go. So in 1989, Ertl had a license from Paramount to produce Star Trek toys. Now, my first Star Trek toy was a Corgi Klingon battle cruiser. But the Bird of Prey and the Excelsior, and I now have an Enterprise as well from this range, were amongst my earliest Star Trek toy pickups, undoubtedly, and my first Ertl pickups. But then I also associate Ertl with this. Now look at that. That is a fully metal, fully die-cast F-15 Strike Eagle. And you see these pylons, they came fully loaded with nice white missiles. And as you can see, Ertl embossed on the underside of the wing there. And these were Ertl Force 1 fighters, and I had a slew of these. And I've since acquired a couple because my son's into his planes. So I've got a nice B-1 bomber, and I've got this one. But they did Tomcats, they did A-10s, you know, I think they even did the old helicopter. But these are the things that I associate Ertl with. But the thing is, this is not what everyone else associates Ertl with. Ertl were known for making farm machinery toys. And yet, somebody in Ertl during the 80s went bonkers and got lots and lots of licenses for all sorts of things that could not be further from farm machinery if you tried. And this is why it really surprised me when I started doing some research into them, because I couldn't understand it, because I in no way associated Ertl with farm machinery. So one thing that I mean, some of my early pickups when I really started getting back into collecting again with these. So we have here a Knight Rider, an A-Team Face Corvette, and an A-Team van. All of these are Ertl. And I would not have guessed in a million years that they would have all been Ertl. Now I think I'm right in thinking this, that Ertl also did a set of cars from Blade Runner, the film. And I believe those are very, very sought after as collector's items in the packaging. I've seen them go for, a lot of money. And I think they were mentioned in some of the Toy Shop on Tour videos. And that was what sort of clued me into the fact that actually Ertl did do other stuff as well, beyond what I knew of them doing in terms of realistic representations of things like fighter jets. So I knew that they'd done Star Trek in the back of my mind, but what I hadn't realised was just how far they branched out. So again, all of these are nice, metal representations, a little bit of plastic on the van there, but they're all Ertls. Not overly obviously Ertl, because you have to try quite hard to actually read the sort of the Ertl writing on the bottom of this one. And I think I may even have been told rather than me noticing that it was Ertl. So there you go, you can just about make it out there. It's very hard to see. Now, there is another one in this range, well I say this range, this theme, if you like, which is an Airwolf. I haven't got it yet. I was looking at one, and of course then it went. Because like the Blade Runner cars, the Ertl Airwolf, and in particular a set of Ertl Airwolf vehicles, with not just a helicopter but some of the cars as well, and another helicopter, that seems to go for a lot of money as well. That seems to be quite sought after, presumably because there aren't many of them around. I've very rarely seen it loose, in fact. So, early 80s, this is what Ertl were doing. And this is all I was exposed to. But I then became, a little bit later on, exposed to these. But I didn't know how many of them there actually were. And this is the one that I think I really sort of knew of. And this, of course, is the Batmobile from the 1989 Tim Burton Batman movie. And it's a rather lovely little die-cast model of that Batmobile, not in shield mode, obviously. But again, relatively obvious Ertl there. And of course, that's 1989. So again, to the late 80s, this is what they were doing. They had the license for die-cast Batman vehicles. And what fascinated me was that I noticed on eBay that this was not the only scale. So we have this one, but then we also have this one, which, as you can see, is considerably larger than its little brethren. So I thought, what on earth is going on here? I thought, what were they actually doing? And then I noticed that there were these sets as well that were sort of describing themselves as micro machines. And as you can see, again, massively different scale. So a nice 3-pack there of all of the sort of the main 89 era, film era, Batmobile, Batwing, and Joker van. And this reminds me very much of the Killing Joke. I mean, not that so much, but this Joker version is very much like sort of from the Killing Joke era, so from the sort of like the sort of the late 70s era Joker. Now maybe that was 80s era as well, but that's kind of what it reminded me of personally. And this was actually, I'll show you the back of this one because this is what really intrigued me about this particular packaging, was that they were doing all of these in different scales. So here we have a 1/64th Joker van and a 1/28th Batmobile, Batwing, and Joker van, which is the one that I just showed you. And then they go up to a 1/43 Batwing and a 1/43 Batmobile, which is this one. So because Ertl were used to doing sort of, a very accurate reproductions of machinery, they took it upon themselves to do properly scaled die-cast vehicles at 3 different levels. Which I just found really, it's classic Ertl, and I think that's why I like them so much, because they are so caring about what they're actually doing accuracy-wise. So, very, very clever. And I was lucky enough to source this as part of a random lot. So you'll remember that I showed you in this set a little teeny tiny Batwing. This is the big Batwing, and as you can see, it's much bigger. It really is much bigger. I don't think that this enormous bat sticker here is original, I'm afraid, but this was about the only loose big Batwing I could immediately see on the site that I could get hold of. So I was quite pleased to get one that still had its canopy intact. I'm not sure if there's supposed to be a Batman in there. I saw one that was up for sort of spares and repairs that had a Batman in there, but the cockpit wasn't there, so I wondered if someone just put a Batman in just for the sake of putting a Batman in, basically. But that is a chunk of metal. I mean, you throw that at somebody, they're gonna know about it. It's pretty nasty. But if you want to sort of recreate the the sort of the Batwing going up against the moon and stuff, that's the thing to do it with, because it's brilliant. You can see it. You can really see it. So again, I had no idea that existed until I started looking around. But Ertl weren't done with Batman just at that point in time, because of course, with that resurgence of the film, we then got Batman the Animated Series, and guess who started doing the toys for that? Oh look, it's Ertl. So that is the Batman Animated Series Batwing. And as a certain Cosmic Toy Man knows, I've picked up a few of these, and I love the original sort of BT sticker on it as well for $2.99. But they did a whole range. And so I do have examples of several of these, both in and out of packaging. And indeed, said Cosmic Toy Man very kindly gave me this once, which is the police helicopter from the range. And as you can see, it's a decent size. Even though it's not a particularly sort of vital vehicle, it's a decent size, and it's still very, very metal, which is classic Ertl. Now I imagine that this is dated from 1992 and 1993, and they're still registered at Ertl Company Inc., Dyersville, Iowa, as they were with that shuttle that I showed you first of all. So interestingly, I have noticed that it looks like Kenner got the license for the later series of the animated show. So I think at some point Ertl took a step back from this sort of high, kind of sort of big budget media licensing, and then they just sort of quietly walked away from it. But along the way, they also bought these guys, Johnny Lightning. So they brought the Johnny Lightning brand. And this I've only recently picked up from Doncaster Toy Fair. But this is now an Ertl product. And this RC2 company was, now, unfortunately I can't quite remember now whether or not they bought Ertl or were bought by Ertl. But basically, they ended up together. So there's no mention of it here yet. But again, die-cast sort of production. This is 2004. So once again, Star Trek came back into the Ertl family. But what really made me laugh out loud when I checked them out on Wikipedia is that technically speaking, this is now an Ertl product. Now, I dare say that most of you of a certain age will know what this is. This is Britain's space. Ertl owned Britons. Ertl bought Britons. And I imagine the only logical reason why they would have bought Britons as late as they did, and it was quite late on, is because Britons do farm stuff. And if you go on the Tomy/Ertl website, because clearly it's now very much a subsidiary of Tomy, you will see that I think the entire focus of the Ertl brand is now farm machinery. That's it. Everything else has obviously moved on to other owners or just obviously sort of fallen out of currency, but they're still doing farm stuff. So I think that they bought Britons because Britons was a known brand for farm machinery. And I guess, I don't know whether their moulds and so on would still have been relevant for them, or if they just wanted to get hold of it, to have ideas, or, I don't know. But it's just, it's come around full circle, and Ertl have now been a company for about 80 years. They've been around for that long. And I think Britons was quite an old company as well. So, there's all this sort of fascinating amalgamation and sort of conglomeration going on as people absorb other people and buy other people out, and the brands continue, and all that sort of stuff does sometimes continue. And I mean, it's incredible to think how much is now under the Tomy umbrella, because of course they became Tomy Takara even as early as maybe the 80s, which meant that they got and they did sort of the Zoids and everything else. So that was all Tomy even back then. So I mean, they've obviously done really, really well to keep going and be as strong as they are now, having been around that long themselves. So I mean, Tomy would be a fascinating one to do a video on. But I just thought it was funny that I had this, that little bit I know was a relation of Ertl, and I had this, which was another relation of Ertl, and yet you get this sort of incredible range of different things, all of which are genuinely Ertl, which have lasted this long largely by virtue of fact that obviously these being original Ertl, but being die-cast, these things last forever. I mean, this is in such incredible condition, despite the fact that it's now 30 plus years old. And even the sticker's in great nick. I mean, someone obviously really sort of looked after this. But I think it just speaks to the quality of Ertl production and care and what they're doing, that you end up with stuff that looks like this. And I mean, they don't seem to be terribly well known. I think they're obviously known for certain individual sets of things. But I don't know whether or not they had a sort of a massive following at the time, or if they just had a very sort of niche following. I haven't seen that many other videos on YouTube terribly obviously about them, as if they weren't that big a deal. But I bet a lot of people had a lot of their stuff, especially for the '89 Batman movie. Although I know that Toy Biz and people were doing stuff with that license as well, but presumably Ertl just had this sort of narrow die-cast license, and other people had licenses for other things, you know, because it clearly wasn't just them doing stuff off the back of the '89 movie. But I just thought it was an interesting company to do a little piece on, because I love their stuff. I really, really do. I've always loved their stuff, and you know, being able to get a Bird of Prey and the Excelsior and all that sort of good stuff early doors was one of my sort of driving things for my love of sort of playing with all things Star Trek and starships related, you know. So if you know anything more about Ertl, or you know any more of their sort of hard to find sets and that sort of thing, and why they're hard to find, I would be fascinated to understand a bit more. And I'd also be interested to understand, you know, how big they actually were in America, because we seem to get a good flow of imported stuff from them here in Britain. Because all of this I bought from, I mean, I have really clear memories as well of seeing it on local toy shelves racks. You know, that sort of carded Star Trek V Bird of Prey, I saw loads of those. And you can still pick them up quite reasonably. Those don't seem to have any particular sort of, you know, massive collector's appeal to them. But I think they're just nice models of the Bird of Prey. And, you know, I do have a bit of a thing for the Bird of Prey as a ship. So, you know, it is the sort of thing that I would pick up. But, yeah, just let, you know, if you'd like to share, please do. And, you know, I hope you've enjoyed that quick sort of romp through some of the stuff that I picked up. Completely unintentionally, really. Because as I say, you know, when I picked some of that stuff up, like the A-Team stuff, I didn't really realise until after the fact that it was Ertl. Because I wasn't aware that they'd done sort of beyond Star Trek, really. So it's kind of been fascinating for me just to find out a bit more about what they've done. And then I've only found out about this Johnny Lightning range recently as well. So that's maybe something else that I look into in due course as well, because I think if I could pick up a few more of those, that would be quite interesting. But I'm kind of hesitant to take it out of the packet. But yeah, it's you know, it's been an interesting journey to find out a bit more about it, and I think on that note I will leave it there for tonight. So cheers, and do like and subscribe as ever. Bye for now.